This and the next two little episodes are based on the idea to talk about timing. And timing is, of course, very essential for animations, and especially when you use practical footage in conjunction with 3D. And of course, this is the major theme here, and I scrub here a little bit along, and you can see here already we have a huge camera move. And the idea here is, of course, that we go with one image. This is here the building and the trees was all done by one image, and we have the time-based practical footage here in the billboard. So we have the option to disconnect the time of the practical footage with the timing of the camera move. This is a huge freedom because now you can optimize exactly when you go out of this billboard, for example, and go into this billboard. Do you have all the time billboards as problem? No, but the truth is you can have many areas where you connect practical footage with 3D or camera mapping. And 3D or camera mapping is, of course, all based on Cinema 4D here. And the idea that I want to discuss here is the timing. In the moment we disconnect the practical footage from the CG footage that we create, that means also the camera move, we can do this in a very nice way and we can optimize the timing, as I said before. The idea here is that we can do exactly everything on set, and on set is here in Cinema 4D. You might say, okay, normally we go on set and we have a big crane there and we film this in one step. Okay, what is the downside of practical footage that you can do in one step? And when you take a look here to all the motion blur that I have integrated into the footage here, then you might notice already that anything that you have done maybe on set is baked in motion blur. And that has, of course, then some limitations. When you slow down the footage, for example, then there wouldn't be anything in terms of motion blur, or maybe not nearly noticeable at all. But if you have shot this very fast and then slow down, you have a lot of motion blur in it, and no one has really an idea why this is nearly not moving at all, but the images are really blurry. And this here is only a little bit. It could be much more. As you can see here, we have a little bit more movement. And when the camera would have moved faster, it would be more. So there is one very big thing where I think the quality can go down very fast when you film this directly on set, and you have to change then the timing. To fasten up, to speed up everything is, of course, much easier. You can introduce motion blur later on, especially with fasten up the footage. You have more frames per second finally, and you have more information, and that makes the work easier. But most of the time you want to slow down. And this is, of course, something that isn't really working if you hadn't prepared for it. When you go maybe with Red Epic to work in 5K and you shoot maybe with 100-120 frames per second or something like that, or even with the new Dragon sensor even faster, then you can slow it down, and it is practically already slowed down when you play it with normal speed, perhaps 24 frames per second. And if the shutter was open in the right way, then the motion blur would fit to the 24 frames per second play speed. This is all not your concern if you have everything in camera mapping. And then you set up the camera, you set up the motion and the timing for it, and with exactly this, when you are happy, then you apply motion blur to it. That can be done, of course, directly in Cinema 4D or with a vector motion path in, for example, After Effects. And that works very nicely here, of course, and you can see here on the letters I have introduced only a little bit just to have it in the way I want to have it. And the timing, let's have a look into the scene file. This is the whole scene in the way I have set it up. And of course I've closed here everything because it's a little bit more stuff here inside of these things, but not that much. I will show you that in detail a little bit later. First of all, we have to go here with the camera move, and you can see here the dark orange camera, reddish orange camera moves here out moves to the trees here then, where the sphere or the partly spheres. Here I have an alpha channel on top of that, so it's black. Don't think there's a mistake, it's just as it is. And I can scrub here along and I can see if the timing works for me or not. And the beauty of that is I have all these keyframes here now. And when I go into my keyframe view, I can select all of these guys and I can move them in one step back and forth, and everything is exactly in the way I want to have it. If I need the whole movement, now maybe in 120 frames, this is just this kind of work. And in fact, I have done this pretty much to every scene. So now the whole movement works here in 120 frames. And with one click, Command C, I'm back where I want. Of course, I can go now here into this camera and copy this camera and set for this camera here, the 2012-03, another speed. And whatever I need, I render it out and compose it in. And that is the beauty of the timing. And again, we have the practical footage here very nicely disconnected. And that was the idea that I wanted to show you here in this music video. And of course, as I've said in the introduction, the music video was produced with all of that in mind, because I want to share this knowledge with you. So we go in the next part then in something more complicated, because we want to see how it works maybe with something that is maybe more connected to the scene than just a billboard. And of course, a little look behind the scene, so to say. It's a making of finally, and we have to know how it is done, of course. What I like to do in many scenes, everything that is very close, if possible, I try to use 3D objects like these lamp poles here. Gives me from the start much more parallax than anything else. The trees, of course, that would be a huge amount of polygons if I would do this in a practical way. So these guys here are just spheres, and not even complete spheres, two spheres in each other, each time exactly from the photo. A little bit of stamp and clone, of course. And you can see here it falls apart immediately when I go to a perspective that that was not prepared for that. And so we have here, of course, just a lot of cheating, or I'll call it magic. I like more magic than to say cheating. And the background picture here, I needed a little bit of this kind of material here from this view, but also here in the background, that's just a parking lot. And why is it a parking lot? Because I had to go very high to get this civic tower here from downtown LA without the typical perspective lines when you shoot it from the ground. So I went up, I think 7 stories, and sneaked in, shot that image, and have it perfectly for the background. As you can see here, when I go back here to frame 40 or so, it is just, from my point of view, perfect. You might have a different opinion finally, but anyway, it worked for me, and it worked for all the people who have seen that music video so far, and so I stick with it. And here you can see as well, there's a lot of 3D stuff in it. But this is not so much timing, this is more behind the scene. And when I go here back to my default camera, it's just that simple. Few little polygons exactly in the way we need it, and that gives the whole illusion here for this part of the music video. Okay, see you in the next part. Thanks for listening. Have fun with it. Bye bye.